Now for our first panel this morning is the Trends panel, and what I would say by way of introduction is that, of course, after this incredibly challenging time of COVID, we really need to revisit the assumptions that we all made before and build our marketing strategies around those new assumptions. Matthew Pritchard from Google spent some time yesterday talking about the new trends that Google is already seeing, you know, the need for increased flexibility, differences in booking patterns, shifts in what holidaymakers are looking for in terms of their end experiences, to name but a few. So this morning's panel is going to go into a bit more depth on all these different trends and the things that they're seeing, and look at what each of the different sectors of the supply chain is seeing as the kind of major developments for LGBTQ plus travel in the future. So I'd like to now welcome to the stage this panel, moderated by Yuan Yong, who is experientialist in chief and co-founder of Out There magazine. Please do come on stage as I'm introducing you. Also with his panelists, Ranjan Goswami, Senior Vice President for Customer Experience at Delta, Rick Stifler, Senior Vice President for Global Leisure Sales at Preferred Hotels, Jodie Cole, the owner of Wild Rainbow African Safaris. Very pleased to see we have a woman. It would be very embarrassing if we only had a panel of men, of course. And last but not least, Miguel Sanz Castedo, General Director of the Instituto de Turismo de España, Tourist España, which is the Spanish National Tourism Organization. Enjoy your panel, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Daniela. I just want to say thank you, Daniela, because people don't ever really acknowledge the MC, and it's a really hard job over 3 days. So please, everyone, give Daniela a round of applause. Continuing in the tradition of British speakers here at this event, good morning, everybody. I hope you're well. Wasn't it fun last night? Really? Yeah? Really fun. And listen, if you think that was fun, wait till you see what we've got for you tonight at Voyage. I'm a sucker for an upgrade, everyone, by the way, Delta. So there are first-class tickets still available. So don't just buy tickets for tonight. Upgrade your tickets for tonight. If anyone wants to upgrade me, I'm happy to go to first. Right? Listen, so it's nice to see so many of you this morning. These sessions are so amazing, and there is so much to learn. So please do try and attend to everything today. And from the perspective of speakers, every diva needs a full audience, you know? So I hope you're all very well. Let me be among the first, well, not the first, the lineup of people on stage to say what a fabulous feeling it is to all be together again here. And what a place for a comeback, huh? The amazing city of Atlanta. By way of introduction, I am Yuan Jong. My pronouns are he and him. I am experientialist in chief of Out There magazine, a luxury and experiential travel magazine rooted in diversity, discovery, and discernment. And I'm so happy to be here with you all today, coming transatlantic for the first time in 18 months from London. Yes. I am one of the ones that Albert Herrera mentioned yesterday. I slipped through, you know. I got through into the US despite borders being closed to us Brits, stowing away on the back of Delta Flight 31, which will amuse my media friends here who enjoy riling me for my focus on luxury travel. You see, sometimes I do sit at the back of the plane. Joking aside, a special thanks to the US Travel Association for my national interest exemption. I know they have and continue to work really hard to champion international travel and tourism. Again, it's a crucial driver for socioeconomic recovery. And I know that many of you here in the United States can't wait to welcome us Europeans back. I'm proud to say that I am celebrating an IGLTA milestone too. It's my 10th consecutive IGLTA convention. I know I wear it well. And I'm proud to have been re-elected to serve on my third term of the IGLTA Association board. As you heard yesterday, the board has been working really hard over the time in the pandemic to continue the great work that IGLTA does, even when travel has ground to a halt. I myself am thrilled to have helped shape an exciting new chapter as we develop the new IGLTA accreditation programs and migrate from the kind gift that Tom and David at Community Marketing Inc. gave us to the IGLTA in their Tag Approved program. And when we launch, it will be the independent global market leader and standard for LGBTQ plus travel accreditation in the travel industry. It aims to provide confidence to LGBTQ travelers that an organization is truly welcoming, and it is independent recognition that the organization is committed to LGBTQ inclusion and diversity. I'm thrilled about the program's evolution, but what I'm most happy about is to be here together, all together again, the IGLTA family. You would have heard that used over the last day a lot, but we are a family, and I'm proud to say that everyone here today is now part of that family. As of today, you are no longer first-timers. This is what community means, real-life interaction, albeit safe and secure, of course. So please do continue to abide by our mask regulations. I know as the conference goes on, there's a temptation to relax a little bit, but the ability to see each other, old friends, make new ones, network, do business, and broaden our horizons to travel is so powerful and so important after 18 months of lockdown. So let's keep it that way. The last 18 months have been challenging for all of us, to say the least, but I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So my intention for the next 15 minutes or so is that this panel will not focus too much on the past, but look at the big bright future ahead and what it holds. I'm aware there's still so much uncertainty in travel, but one thing I know is that over the last 18 months, and I'm sure you hear from these guys, that we've all dusted and polished off our crystal balls and delved deep into trade and consumer insight to figure out what lies ahead. President Clinton once said, "Follow the trend lines, not the headlines." A piece of advice I definitely heeded during the course of the pandemic, and that's what we're here to talk about today, trends. What's next, and what we should all be considering and focusing on when it comes to LGBTQ travel and tourism in the immediate future, 2022 and beyond. So without further ado, let's start with a short introduction from each of our panelists. They represent an amazing cross-section of our fabulous industry, spanning hotels, aviation, destinations, and experiences. I'd like us to introduce ourselves, each of us to tell us where you come from, what you do, but also please, to feed my burgeoning optimism, I'd like each of you to tell us one positive thing that has come out of the pandemic for you, whether personal or professionally, just to break the ice and kick us off. Ranjan, why don't you start?
Jorn, thank you so much, and hi everybody. It's really good to see you all, and welcome to Atlanta. I get the opportunity to live here, and I think it's a fabulous city, and I hope you're getting to experience that as well. I'm Ranjan Goswami. I work at Delta Airlines, and I oversee our customer experience for the company and for our customers, thinking end-to-end, both digitally and physically, on the experiences we want to develop and hopefully put out into the marketplace. So looking forward to also connecting with many of you on your feedback. I think when I think about the pandemic, and one of the positive things about it that I've realized is my family is far-flung. I grew up in Taipei and Hong Kong, and my parents still live in Hong Kong. I hadn't seen them for 18 months because of the pandemic, and they just came to the United States a couple months ago to travel all over. And it made me realize what I took for granted in terms of what travel enables us to do, and how that in-person experience is simply irreplaceable. And they leave on Monday, so it's been an amazing experience with them. But I think just not taking things for granted and living in the present, so important.
Jody.
I'm Jody Cole. I'm the founder of Wild Rainbow African Safaris. I'm a professional safari guide. We've been going strong for 17 years. Wow. What else would you like to know? I take folks to East and Southern Africa. I won't list all the countries, but East and Southern Africa, let's just say that. And I'd say, on a rather vain point, one of the good things that have come out of this thing is I've lost weight. Nothing like a little stress. But on a real poignant side, it's actually helped me get closer to my family. My travel has kept me away from my family, and it has deepened my need for that. It's something that's always there and something that can't be taken for granted. And I'm more and more aware of that. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
That's so lovely, and you are with family today.
I am. Hi,
Rick,
everybody.
what about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Stifler. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Leisure Sales for Preferred Hotels and Resorts. Preferred Hotels and Resorts is the largest independent brand in the world with over 650 hotels in about 80 countries now. And about 11 years ago, I started a program called Preferred Pride, which is our LGBTQ initiative for the company. And I think I have actually two positive things, if that's okay. One, I lived with my husband for 14 months, and we're not divorced without traveling. And the other positive thing was really going from 100 flights in 2019 to 0 for 14 months. I really was able to reconnect to the city that I live. And I live in New York City. I've been there for 26 years. And my last work trip was in Atlanta on March 12th, flew back, everything shut down on March 13th. And to be in New York City, where I'm always usually gone every 2 weeks, and to reconnect with a city that I've been living in for so long was just something actually quite special. And a lot of people, I didn't escape to the Hamptons or Connecticut. And so we were there, and there was a small group of our friends that were just there. And as challenging as it was when it first started with the pandemic, and just see everything that was going on in New York City with body trucks, and it was just kind of horrific in a way. But at the same time, it was unique and special, because going down and walking through the West Village or Meatpacking District and being the only person on the street was something that would probably never happen again. And to really bond with some close friends, and finding the one restaurant that would give us a margarita in a soup container, and walking around and walk-telling through the city for a few months, and growing COVID hair was, something that a lot of our friends are really going to look back at. And as challenging as time it was also a special time. So reconnecting where I live was good.
I only drink my margaritas from a soup container. So, Miguel, what about you?
Hi, I'm Miguel Sanz, and I also come from the other side of the Atlantic, thanks to Delta. And the good thing about the pandemic is that when I was in border control here in Atlanta, for the first time, the border control policeman, greeted me with a smile and said, "Welcome, we don't get many Europeans now." Which is not the usual thing that happens when you go through border control in the States. But also professionally, I became the CEO of Spanish tourism for the government. Before that, I was the director, the CEO of Madrid's DMO. And in the middle of the pandemic, the minister called me and said if I wanted to join them and try to help them out to go through the pandemic. I don't know if it's good or bad yet, but I know it's a challenge. It's been challenging. It's for the first time. Spain is the second largest tourist country in the world. We received in 2019 84 million international visitors. It was weird to say last year that in April we received 0 visitors, international visitors. In May, 0 international visitors. And in June, we received, I think it was 2,000 international visitors. For someone who has worked in tourism for so long, it was unimaginable. It was something that couldn't happen in the worst of your nightmares. You could drop 2%, 3%, but no to 0. Happily enough, the summer has gone quite well, considering. Spaniards have traveled more than ever, and we have more Spaniards traveling within Spain than we have ever had, which is good. And we have recovered during the summer season around 40 to 50% of international travelers. Thank you for reconnecting Spain with the US, Madrid and Barcelona. One message, Spain is open. I read in the media, Europe is closing again. No. The European Union works in a funny way. So it's a recommendation by the European CDC to impose new restrictions to American passengers, but it doesn't mean that those restrictions have to be closed the countries down. So in Spain, the decision has been that fully vaccinated Americans over the age of 12 can come with their CDC card, and children under 12 accompanied by their parents can come without vaccination or test. So families can freely come. So the only difference is that now you have to show your CDC card when you go through passport control.
Well, you'll be very glad to know that I'll be in the Canaries in a few weeks. But let's stick with you, because so much of what we do at Out There magazine, the questions we get is about where we can travel, right? I'd say in the last year, travelers were very patient, they were dreaming big. But this year, they want to know where we can go and when, right? I've noted that they're definitely got a lot less patient, but I just wanted to know, what is Spain doing as a destination? You've talked about how you're going to start welcoming travelers back, but especially LGBTQ travelers. What are you doing to welcome LGBTQ travelers back?
Well, what we think, and this pandemic has given us time to think and to know what do we want to do after the pandemic. And I think that many destinations have focused on gay-centric promotion. It's nightlife and where the gays are going. And we have plenty of those destinations. We have Sitges and Maspalomas and Torremolinos and Ibiza, although it's been taken by the Straits. But there are destinations, Madrid, Barcelona. Of course, Madrid Pride is one of the biggest prides in the world. But I think it's too centered on nightlife, too centered on on male gaze. And we need to broaden the scope of what LGBT travelers need. And I think that what we're going to focus is on, and we are focusing already, is in giving LGBT travelers a perspective that they are interested in about Spain. For example, there is a museum in Madrid, one of the biggest museums in the city, the Thyssen-Bornemisza Museum, one of the greatest museums in Europe. And they have developed a few years ago a tour of their collection with an LGBT perspective. So it's the same pictures, the same, Velázquez or Picasso or whatever, but the guide tells you things that are of interest to an LGBT traveler. And it's something that makes you feel better because you are respected and you are taken care of, but also gives you knowledge of things that you didn't know and allows you to grow while traveling. And this is the ultimate thing you want to do when you travel. You want to grow as a person. You want to feel better. And I think this is the perspective that we're taking in LGBT travel promotion and product development, and not just for gay people or male people, but for all types and all the letters of our rainbow. This is the main thing. And the second thing is that I think through LGBT destinations, as in corporations, they have to mean what they say and what they sell. And I'm kind of tired of seeing me being gay as well. Destinations that promote themselves like, you all gays come here to have fun and spend your pink dollars, but then my LGBT community is, I was going to say a bad word, but it's in a bad situation, or they don't have rights, or they are not respected, not to say accepted or tolerated. And I think that this is important as LGBT people to, in governmental positions like mine, I'm going to tell the world how we are in Spain, what legislation do we have, how do we manage LGBT people rights in the country, and this is going to be my presentation card in the rest of the world. So Spain has one of the most progressive legislations regarding LGBT rights, equal marriage 2005. This year the government approved and the parliament passed a law for LGBT rights, including self-determination for transgender and transsexual people, and which is groundbreaking in the world. And I think this is what we have to show the rest of the LGBT community around.
I think that's truly amazing. And from a trends perspective, do you think people are traveling later? There's a lot of last-minute travel? That's what I keep hearing. From a destination perspective,
Totally.
Are you seeing people coming at the last minute?
From one day to another. They make bookings today to go on a holiday tomorrow.
Ranjan, what do you think about that? Staying on the subject of last-minute travel, are you seeing this when it comes to flights at Delta? How is it affecting the way you work?
I think their recovery has certainly been choppy. Earlier in this summer, when things were going so well on the vaccine front, we saw our bookings start to resemble regular bookings, and that typical booking curve over 3 months. What we've now seen with the variant is a lot more last minute. However, we're seeing bright lights. Places like the Caribbean and Mexico, we've actually never been bigger there. We're flying to more cities and with larger schedules than we have in the past. So in places that are making travelers feel comfortable and that have entry requirements that are manageable, we are seeing the demand come back there. In Europe, we have bright spots. Places like Spain, places like Iceland, Greece, Croatia have all been bright spots for us. And I think, again, as restrictions get lifted, even though now we're going a little bit in a different direction, we're going to see that choppiness come back and go. But I think the point for us is we have airplanes. We can point them wherever the demand is. And so as we all work as a travel community and figure out where that demand is going, we can absolutely meet it.
And I one thing you guys have been very good at is getting communications out. And I see you opening new routes or reopening routes. Joburg, Croatia, increasing routes to Canada, Mexico, which are all prime LGBTQ plus destinations. What are the destinations and routes that are popular now, and what do you forecast to become popular, particularly in the context of LGBTQ plus travelers?
Sure. I think LGBTQ travelers are pretty incredible. They go everywhere, right? And so we see them not in any one place. And I think for Delta, what that means is how do we make sure we have the inventory we need for them? I'll talk about Delta Vacations for just a minute. one of the things we found is wherever we go, that accreditation that IGLTA and TAG do together to ensure that hotels are safe, so we can create land and air partnerships across the globe. So obviously there are places like the Caribbean and Mexico, which I've talked about. Obviously Europe is a very popular destination. Australia has been as well in the past. Right now there's a lot of restrictions going into Australia, but we intend to see that coming back as well. We are thrilled to be back in South Africa after we were the first US airline to go to South Africa, and we're now back with an A350. Wonderful ride over there. So I think, again, it's just about making sure as places open up, we are ready to go.
Have there been any surprises, something that shocked you, somewhere that you weren't expecting to be popular?
I think Iceland has definitely shown up, and they have marketed themselves in an incredible way. But then there's places like Spain where there's just such a natural desire to go there, right? And so as we've reintroduced our flights, they've been full. I was just telling Miguel I was in Costa Brava for the first time, and what an incredible part of the country to go see. And by the way, things look very much back in business. This was back in July. So, I think we're going to see more of that over time as different countries try different things.
So, and what else can LGBTQ travelers expect of Delta, or any other airline for that matter in the future? What's going to be the key trends affecting LGBTQ travel when it comes to aviation and airlines in general?
I think one of the things we've been talking a lot about at Delta is the fact that we have to reflect our traveler base. And I hope you saw that in the video today, where
Absolutely.
there is an authenticity of people feeling that they can be who they are. If you had told me 17 and a half years ago that I'd be sitting on a stage at an IGLTA conference, I wouldn't even know what IGLTA was, that I could be an out gay person, I could take my partner Eric to officer engagements of the other leaders at Delta, that wouldn't have been possible. I wouldn't have thought that was possible. So coming up and being able to have our best authentic selves show up at work is critical. And the reason I dwell on that for a minute is because I think LGBTQ travelers want to interact with brands that show them and feel like they are being accepted. And our people show up in all stripes and all backgrounds, and we're having a lot of conversations, quite frankly, since George Floyd's murder, about making sure people can talk about who they are, can express themselves, can share their stories, and that's manifesting an authenticity that I think people see on our airplanes. When we looked at the J.D. Power Award that we won this last year, and by the way, this last year was about taking care of our people and our customers and being safe. We were not trying to win any awards. But where we won that award was in how our people showed up. Our flight attendants, our gate agents, our ground teams, our reservation specialists. It was about people. And I think the travel industry is fundamentally a humanity business, and all of us have to kind of show up and make sure we are supporting our people on the front lines to be able to be their best selves. So that's one thing that I think is critical. As we get more granular into aviation, I think there's a couple of things that are really exciting for us. First, the aircraft has become an incredible platform for content. Just a couple months ago, I got to watch on a Delta flight Love Victor, which is a new sitcom,
I watched that
new
on the
TV
way
show.
and devoured 3 episodes. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
I not only devoured it, I just got caught up at all 3 seasons after that. But what it makes you realize is that if you showcase the content, again, that's broadly, it will resonate with different segments. People are going to find that to be really interesting. It's going to inspire more thought, inspire more travel. So I think there's an opportunity on content. Delta now has 125,000 seatback screens, more than any other airline. And we're now adding to that streaming Wi-Fi capability. And so I think things like that, staying connected, having the content that you want, having content that's representative of what you might be interested in, those are all going to be really, really important. Second, I think digital has never been more important. People want to know and feel like they are understanding every step of the process. I think all of us are struggling right now to keep up with all the changes and make sure we can tell our customers what to expect when they land into Spain. By the way, Spain's done a great job of making it easy for travelers. But I think things like that as it relates to that digital experience is going to be absolutely critical as well. And then I think there are things like DE&I, but also like sustainability, where consumers today are looking for brands that actually are paying attention to how the world is changing and what are we going to do to take part in that. And so at Delta, we're taking sustainability very, very seriously. We are buying SAF in terms of sustainable aviation fuel. We want to be a carbon neutral airline. We have a goal to try to get there. And so I think those types of narratives, in addition to the core product, which in our case is safe, reliable, clean, on time. We've got to obviously do those things, but ladder in all these other items there as well.
No, that's amazing. I really actually applaud your DEI content on board. I also watched the USA versus Billie Holiday, for example. It was amazing, you know. And there was an MLK movie, and I wanted to take a nap, but I actually really dived into that content. So I just want to applaud you guys for that. Really.
Well, I'll tell you, Jorn, we got a complaint letter the other day to our CEO, and it was about a scene in a particular film on board where two women were kissing. And it was a very, very innocent type of kissing. And what was so wonderful is the response from our senior leadership team was, no, we have kissing of all sorts of types with straight folks in our content. This is okay, right? And I think those types of attitudes that are changing is what is going to ultimately, create that acceptance around the world.
That's brilliant. Jody, I saw you got really excited there about Airlift to Africa. No doubt it's music to your ears. Tell me more about what's happening in Africa right now, or anywhere that's, not a little off the beaten path, so to speak. And how can LGBTQ plus travelers help to boost travel to destinations to help in recovery?
Okay. You may have to remind me of that last piece, because I want to acknowledge Delta quickly. And I have to say that after all these years, I just watched Celluloid Closet for the first time. I feel a little shameful that it's taken me so long to watch it, but nonetheless, and also generationally speaking, I don't think I'm that old, but I remember watching it, and there were some scenes in there, and I'm like looking to my left and looking to my right. Can anybody see what I'm watching? I mean, clearly I still have some internalized homophobia, but the movie is exceptional. It's about our history in film, if you guys haven't ever seen Celluloid Closet, so thank you for including that. And I also want to, I just said this behind the stage, that Delta partnered, I've been able to get to Africa 4 times in the past year, and Delta partnered with Air France and with KLM, so that I and various guests of mine could actually join me in Africa, so yay Delta. Now, I've already forgotten the question. I'm so excited about it.
How can LGBTQ travelers help to boost travel to a destination like Africa, but also give us a little flavor of what's happening in Africa right now?
Well, Africa is open. Every country is open. Basically, you just have to go through the gauntlet of getting negative PCR tests. Most countries are 48 hours prior to boarding your flight. One country is 92 hours, or some random number like that. I think it's actually Kenya. And I just returned from Kenya 3 weeks ago. This isn't really LGBTQ, but since I'm in a room full of industry important people, I'm going to say that I think there needs to be, I think it can happen, a streamlined way to get into countries. So like a centralized form that each country, because it is so confusing, and I know everything is changing almost minute to minute on what the regulations are to get into each country. And I have guests, yesterday I'll check in on what needs to be done in order to get into Kenya or South Africa, and it's changed. And Delta has an incredible map online showing what are the regulations, and it's very up to date, but it's still very confusing. So LGBT travelers, it's interesting, really the only country that still has people scratch their head a little bit about going is Uganda. And I do have a trip. I'm guiding a group to Uganda in February, and then we're going to Tanzania on the second half of the trip. And my personal philosophy, and then I'll couple it with kind of the community's feelings around Uganda, just to explain some things around LGBTQ. My personal philosophy, for me, even though I'm a lesbian and I've been around for a while, and it is important to me that me and my people are accepted everywhere, one. And I was the only gay travel company when Uganda was doing the whole kill the gays thing. I was the only country, I wish, but in my head, I'm a country. Anyway, that I said I'm not doing travel to Uganda, and I did a huge publicity thing about it, and in wild anticipation that Uganda would come back and argue with me, but they didn't, damn it. Anyway, so, oops, sorry. But I'm going now. So in addition to LGBT issues and this movement work I've done as part of my history, it's important to me that conservation for me first. If we don't have the gorillas to go see, there ain't no queers going to Uganda. I mean, you know, there's great stuff in Uganda, but it's like I go first to protect wildlife and conservation, and second to be gay. And I do everything I can to make sure that my guests feel comfortable. So it's important to me that I know what the rules and regulations, what's the latest. You know, in Tanzania a couple of years ago, the president said something really kind of inappropriate to the media about gays coming to Tanzania. And I happened to be at We Are Africa, which is a luxury trade show thing. And I asked some of my colleagues from there, and I said, what is this with the deal with the president? Because, you know, there's the Serengeti, you guys have some kind of cool destinations, kind of climbing Kilimanjaro, et cetera. And they said, never mind what the president said, because the tourism industry fully supports LGBTQ travelers coming in. We need you to come, we want you to come, and if there's anything we can do to support you, please let us know. So that was really comforting, because then when I do my research with other countries like Zimbabwe, for a long time people were like, I'm not going to Zimbabwe. Believe it or not, the conversation of LGBTQ rights is on the table in Zimbabwe right now, of all destinations. You know, I'm like, what? Botswana is totally open to us being there. South Africa, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, South Africa, thanks to Nelson Mandela and in the Constitution, it is the only Constitution, please correct me if I'm wrong afterwards, but as far as I know, South Africa is the only country in the world that has written into its new Constitution that LGBT marriage is legal. And I know it's legal in a lot of countries, but is it in the Constitution? So, and South Africa is so gay. And then our good friend, David Ryan, with Rhino Africa, you know, he's all about being gay. He's just an amazing guy, and he's a good friend of IGLTA, if you know him. And he's a good friend of mine, and we work together quite often. So, but personally with my guests, people will, some guests don't care. They're like, we're queer and bring my kids, you know, we're lesbians, gay men, whatever. They don't care. They just want to go on safari.
And do you think that's going to change after the pandemic? Are we going to get more adventurous, or do you think less adventurous?
Yes, and when we say the word adventure, for me, it's going to be more remote destinations. I've already had several people asking me, what can we do that's of a wilderness type thing? I love wilderness adventures, anything from just going on safari walks to, you know, backpacking trips, which is something I just did recently myself, and, you know, being really, but more specifically, luxury experiences in wilderness where the max stays are 8 people at a lodge and at length. Typically, it's been 2 nights, 3 nights at a destination, and people are wanting to say 4 and 5, so they can really sink into the wilderness and be as far away from people as possible, which is ironic considering the fact, because of the shutdown, we've been as far away from people as possible. But it's different. I'm sure you know what I mean. Out in nature, it's just, it's so healing to the soul.
Are you recognizing any other patterns in LGBT, LGBT travelers booking with you? Is it coming back? I'm not going to ask you how business has been. We all know that's been challenging. Is it coming back? Are you seeing people more? Are you seeing more inquiries? Are you seeing more bookings?
A little bit. In order to prepare for this, I reached out to Brand G, that many of you know, of also Out Adventures, Rob there, and a good colleague of mine at African Safari Company, and to find out what they're saying. And it's true for me that I hadn't heard this expression in forever, but one of them said something about dinks, and I'm like, what's a dink again? Dual income, no kids. Really wanting to spend a lot of money on a trip and really just like, you know, stay for 20 days. Family safaris, I've had one inquiry about a family safari, and I'm like, look, honey, when you're ready to go, let's rock and roll. You know, they're just doing research. So people are really contacting me more to find out, what are the regulations so far? What's the deal? Are people traveling? They're just they're doing a lot of research, and I'm happy to do the homework to give them the right answers.
That's super positive. I'm there. Delta One, luxury safari, I'm with you, all right?
Yes.
So Rick, what are your thoughts on this? I know at Preferred, you do a lot of audience insight. You watch LGBTQ customers and their behavior. What are the key trends emerging, do you feel, for the next year when it comes to hotels and hospitality with specific regard to LGBTQ plus travel?
It's funny, it's like when we talk about LGBTQ travel trends, I just feel like there's always just a travel trend, because you said the LGBTQ market is traveling everywhere. They're just like any other well-traveled consumer. And I feel like there's not a really big differentiation between what a straight person is going to travel for that's a well-traveled person or LGBTQ. You know, I think that as we were talking about last night, during the pandemic, it was a return to old. Like these places that you could get to domestically were on fire. Like, you know, the East Coast was going to Palm Springs, which wasn't always a big thing. And then you got the West Coast going to Puerto Vallarta, and then the East Coast was going to Puerto Vallarta, Provincetown. As soon as the gates opened up, you know, everyone's heading to Mykonos, Croatia. They got the passport and they're ready to travel. And so I just think as with any traveler that travels a lot, they're just eager to, A, to return to some familiar destinations, because the LGBT community always likes going back because of community, because of being around people just like them. So areas like Provincetown and Mykonos are always so popular every year. But they also still want that new adventure. They want to go out there and discover something new that their friend hasn't done before. And so I just think once the gates open up, areas like Asia Pacific are going to be alive. Latin America is going to be alive. Areas right now that's been very popular for us and still continue will be like Mexico. Mexico's done a very good job of having a great COVID policy in place. So our properties there have done very well throughout the pandemic and continue to do so, because, you know, if you test positive, then they put you up for 2 weeks in a, you know, in an all-inclusive suite, so that's not so bad. And so you test negative and come back to the States. So we're eager to go to Canada, and I think Canada is going to be very exciting, so just, I think for luxury, for LGBTQ travel, they're just ready to travel anywhere and experience, as we talked about before, and going back to city destinations. And I think the LGBT community is going to be great for City Center because, of course, they've been hit so hard. The leisure hotels within our portfolio have been having the best years ever. They've met their budgets in June this year for the entire year. Some of our hotels last year in the pandemic had record summers. The drive market's always been strong, will continue to be strong. So the leisure's done very well. Of course, the segments like corporate has taken a big hit. And I think, you know, forecasting what was going to happen possibly in the fall with a little bit of rebound in corporate has kind of gone away because of the new variant. And then also group is now being canceled and pushed back into 2022. But I'm sure, as Belmont can attest to, is like the leisure properties have been on fire. So anything in a drive market, now anything I can fly to. And it's just more of now of like, am I gonna, not that LGBTQ travel, they're not willing to travel, it's just now, okay, am I gonna get out? Can I get back in? There's always that hesitancy right now of travel. So I think domestically, with wherever you are, is going to still be strong. I definitely would capitalize on the great airfares right now, since that corporate rebound that's not happening. When you go, I've got to go to California in 2 weeks, and I'm booking a one-way ticket for $69 to LA from JFK. And so definitely take advantage of those nice airfares. I know you probably want them a little higher, but I think it's also going to be a great,
lot higher.
A lot higher. But it's going to be a great opportunity.
Which has been different to previous in the last 18 months,
Oh
right?
my gosh,
because when we talk,
I was paying $1,000 in summer,
Yeah,
you know, to go to LA and San Francisco and a coach ticket.
and car hire and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
And I
It's
mean,
so expensive.
yeah, there's definitely the parts of it, like your car hires and the going to, even if you're trapped within the, you can't travel internationally and you're traveling around where you live, you know, the rates at the hotels have been, they were selling rack rate and they're 100%. And a lot of times they don't have any availability. So it's definitely been an eye-opener to see how much money is still out there and what our hotels are demanding in rates. But I think what's going to be great for the LGBTQ community is to bring back business into the cities, because it's always had a connection with cities, you know, for culture, for entertainment, for nightlife, for prides. So once we can get back into the cities, which we are now, and I've just noticed that, especially even with the Delta variant, when a lot of cancellations were coming in, maybe from international travel, they were bringing it back into the city. And now, like even with New York, with Broadway opening back up last week, I was just in LA a couple weeks ago, and my new hotel was 100% sold out on the weekend and running $700 rates in West Hollywood. And so our hotels in New York City have kind of done the same thing. So they've really kind of capitalized on that staycation experience. And if anyone was canceling, they're looking at coming back and spending some time in the cities. If they weren't already living in the cities, and during the pandemic, they were staying in the city just to kind of get out of their apartment.
No, absolutely. We see that. I mean, we ran a big piece of trends research for luxury travelers earlier in the year. And, you know, most of the trends are pretty much aligned with the mainstream, but two big trends coming out of LGBT was city-based travel. That's, you know, that's where our communities thrive. That's our homeland. That's where we meet people. And the other thing was immersion in culture. I know we spoke a lot of that recently in many panels we've been on together over the last 18 months. But, you know, cities and culture. So what advice can you give city-based hoteliers that may be in the room on how to capitalize and how to jump on that trend?
Well, I think for any city hotel is also creating that additional add-on. So our hotels aren't always by discounting rate, because when you come in and discount rate, it takes you several years to build that back up. So you might go into a city and say, well, I'm staying at the Mark Hotel in New York City and I'm still paying $1,000 a night. And they've held that type of rate through the last 18 months and still selling, during the pandemic, 40 to 50%, because they know their client base. So it's always creating an extra additional add-on. You see a lot of stay 2 nights, get the 3rd night free type of promotions. And as I deal with any of my hotels, if you're going after the LGBTQ community, is just make sure you're speaking to that community. As Matthew said yesterday in the Google presentation, inclusivity is key. And that's one thing I try to do with my job and working with all my hotels and working with great partners like IGLTA and community marketing and getting that education across, is that if you're going to go after this market, you need to speak to this market and you need to include this market. And nothing really, one of my biggest pet peeves is when I go to some of these trade shows and that are focused on our market, and then you have hotels selling to it, but they have no initiative. You go to their website, you don't see yourself, but I want the gay market and the lesbian market, and I want the honeymoon market and the wedding market. But then you go and look at their websites and you see it doesn't speak to any of us. And so for me, it's always a continuing education that you need to be involved with the community. You need to, what's going on in your backyard, you need to be part of organizations like this. You need to include this in your marketing and your collateral and your websites. Because if we don't see us and you, we're going to go to the next person.
And do you feel we're more attuned to that after the pandemic, or do you think it's about the same?
Absolutely. And I think that right now we're just in tune to a lot more things. And it's just, I think moving forward as we come back to normalcy, hopefully, sometime soon, that where we travel, why we travel is going to have a different meaning. It's going to be a different meaning for people who speak to me, that want me. Because we work in the luxury hotel segment, and of course, almost 9 out of 10 times, we're always going to have an amazing experience at a 5-star hotel. And we treat everybody the same. But when I look at you, I'm like, sometimes you don't. It doesn't always go that way. And I think, I remember one time listening to David and Tom doing a presentation with community marketing, and they always say, don't think that at your hotel, just because your front desk and your GM might be LGBTQ friendly, that your entire staff are going to be the same way. So with my hotels, it's always having the conversation, it's all having the training, and it needs to be incorporated throughout the hotels, not just at your front check-in and your reservations. So it really needs to be communicated. So when I'm working with my hotels, it's just like, if you want this market, walk the walk, talk the talk. And that's a big part of my Pride program, is that when we started it, it wasn't just going in and saying, hey, let's load a preferred Pride rate and have everyone book and get an amenity. It was really making them go through education courses that we put together, and working with amazing organizations like IGLTA, and working with David and Tom at Community Marketing. They helped me put together a very successful program that we've had for the last 10 years that's generated over $30 million to our hotels that participate in the program. But if anyone here is first-timers in a hotel, this is the perfect place to be and perfect place to start. And you got some amazing partners here in this room to work with to help you grow that. And it could be something small, it could be something big, but it's just having that conversation with your hotels. And that's what I'm continuously doing with being here, sharing this experience, and having continuing education.
I love what you're saying there. I think diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be sustainable as well. But on that note, you launched something new this year at Preferred called Beyond Green, which is a sustainable travel portfolio. And last year, I had the opportunity to interview Costas Christ when it first launched, who was spearheading the project with you at Preferred. And he was very passionate about the intersection of sustainability and diversity and inclusion when it comes to travel in the future. Can you tell us a little bit about Beyond Green and your thoughts on how greater inclusion fits within sustainability?
Yeah, I think, one of the positive things that came out for our company during the pandemic was the launch of a new brand. So Preferred Hotel Group launched a separate brand called Beyond Green, which is a brand based on sustainability. And it's more than just hotels using single-use plastics. It's really those hotels that have a dedication and initiative for the sustainability market, and they go above and beyond to be a part of this brand and what they're doing at their hotels. So the Beyond Green stands for nature, community, and culture, and we chose those words carefully because we just feel that those 3 areas, from whatever we've done collectively or individually the last 18 months, they need the respect and gratitude moving forward when we select travel. So we have over 50 indicators that they have to meet to be a part of the brand, and one of those is having policies in place that are against exploitation, or discrimination, or harassment for anyone who, based on gender, sex, age, sexual orientation, religion, disability, and they must have those policies in place at the hotels, and not just only have them in place, but also to implement and communicate those throughout the hotels. And so we as a company believe that that travel makes the world a better place. And you can only be a better place if inclusivity and diversity start with yourself, your workplace, and travel. So we just feel that this brand, we're excited about where this brand is going to go, and we just know it's going to be a perfect fit for the LGBTQ community.
That's amazing. Jodie, you talked very passionately about sustainability and conservation
Yes.
earlier. And you know, one of the big buzzwords that came out of this pandemic is build back better. How do you feel that we can build back better?
Honestly, is that we stop talking about going back to it being normal or this is over. The only example I can give is that when 9/11 happened, it was frightening, of course, to say the least, but it's the norm. We now know that we have to go through several security things. It's just, we know, we pack prepared to change, to make sure we can get through security. And it's all because 9/11, and originally it was hugely inconvenient to do that. And sometimes it's still hugely inconvenient. But that changed what was normal for travel then, because we could just whiz through, and now we can't whiz through, we have to go. So now there's going to be a new norm about traveling. We're going to have the little yellow vaccination cards to some countries that I go to anyway. I have to have that. Well, now we're going to have a COVID card. You got to remember to bring that thing. It's got to be with your passport. I mean, there's going to be a whole new gauntlet of things to think about. So there is no end of COVID. It's going to be the norm. It's something that our guests are going to have to constantly remember to consider when it comes to traveling, because the world's going to want to know that this pandemic is truly going to end within a short period of time. And especially countries that I go to, which is most of Africa, the continent of 50-something countries, is third world-ish, right? So people are already scared about malaria, in which I tell them, don't worry about it. The chances of that's a conversation over coffee sometime if somebody wants to listen to me talk about malaria. But anyway, but now being concerned about COVID in a third world country, and there's plenty of them represented here off of the continent of Africa, is explaining, here's what you could do. You're going to be just fine. We have thousands of guests coming to our countries, right, to join us, and you can too, and here's what you need to do. And when I raised my hand just a moment ago, I wanted to say that it is so important, and I've learned this, I started to say the hard way, I've actually learned this the glad way, because I want to make sure that my guests, our guests, feel fully informed and feel comfortable going to, even to London, to England, just because England has been so concerned and very shut down as a result of this. And so it's kind of put something in me about, okay, do I really want to go to England? And it has nothing to do with England, but it's in my head now. So making sure that the information in our websites is easily accessible, like top shelf. It's one of the first things that you can click, how to get into our country or whatever. But also that me as a tour operator and other tour operators that are represented here is that we are so infinitely informed about our destination that you blow your guests out of the water. And there are times when that stuff comes out of my mouth and I'm like, whoa, that was good. All right. Because I really want people to live their dreams ultimately. And going backpacking or going to see the Eiffel Tower or going to go, the Great Wall of China, all these things that all of us have dreamed. We all have dreams. And having someone across the phone or across the internet extend their hand and say, you know what, you're going to be okay. It isn't over. And now we have a whole new thing to think about. It's not going to be that hard. Let's talk about this. We got this.
I love that because, someone said to me a while ago, we don't sell travel, we sell dreams. And I think that's really important. Ranjan, in talking to Rick earlier, I used the word intersection. And I know it really reminded me of something I think we both in particular truly understand. That's intersectionality. And while I'm proudly gay, I'm also proudly Asian, which is in itself, Asian is a bit of a catch-all and challenging. And it's no secret that besides the pandemic, the issue of race relations, you brought that up earlier, has been a huge topic over the 18 months, but also gender, non-gender diversity, ability, age, and many other subjects that we as travel providers and the industry need to be much more mindful of than ever before. Can you talk a little to that, perhaps anything that Delta is doing to look after its staff and passengers when it comes to intersectional backgrounds?
Yeah, it's such a great question. You know, being of Indian origin, growing up in Greater China, and now being in the United States and being gay, there's a lot of intersectionality in my own life. And I think one of the things we have to realize is there is so much diversity in the world, and how do you prepare all of our employees for those interactions, right? And so, one, we have to talk more about it. And organizations have to talk more about it and have serious, authentic conversations, which we are really actively doing. The second, I think, is we have to really spend time on training. And so at Delta now, everybody is going through DE&I training. And it's not just a one and done, it's an annual thing. Because these attitudes are changing faster. I actually sit on the board of GLAD, which is one of a very important LGBTQ advocacy organization, especially making sure that LGBTQ is represented in the media. And one of the things we realize is you've got to keep the conversation going. You've got to have different images. You've got to have different people take part. And so we're trying to do that within Delta as well. I think the other thing that brands have to do is we have to take part in what's happening in our society. Yes, you can show up at Pride, but it's got to be authentic, right? Don't just show up being like, I've ticked that box. How do you do that, and how do you show up with your people? And remember that your employees can be your biggest ambassadors because you have all of these people represented in your employee group, chances are. And then you've got to show up also when things matter, right? I remember when Delta wrote an amicus brief in favor of marriage equality in the United States. Those types of things also matter. And by the way, travelers are paying attention to that. And then I think finally, as it relates to social media, we have such an opportunity to tell stories. And we recently told a story about a trans colleague in the tech ops organization and talking about what it's like to be a trans person in our technical operations group, right? Those are stories that need to be shared. That was something that came on Delta's handle. And again, I think travelers are thinking about these things. So intersectionality is about showing up and having the conversation. There are multiple venues in which we have to go and do so. And I'm really proud to say we are trying to lean into that. Are we perfect at it? No. Are we learning about it? Absolutely. Is it scary? Fundamentally scary. Because we were always taught never talk about these issues at work, right? But actually, the more we talk about it, the more our people get armed with understanding that it's not to be scared. And then as these customers interact with our brand, they're realizing, you know what? Delta is an inclusive place. It's a place I want to go back to.
It's amazing. Now, as we come into our final 5 minutes, I want to go back to Miguel. When we talked beforehand in prepping for this panel, we were discussing a very interesting trend. You know, one thing I've personally done over the last 18 months is watch a lot of TV, right? We all have Netflix and all that. And Miguel, you'll be glad to know that my guilty pleasure is the show called Elite.
Love it.
In and around Madrid. I have heard that a lot of travelers has been inspired to visit different parts of the world that they've seen on TV in the last 18 months. So beyond Spain, shows like Pose for New York City, Hollywood, It's a Sin, Bridgerton, The Crown, all have inspired LGBTQ travelers to want to visit the destinations. And even a few weeks ago in Malta, I met a woman who is a guide, and she recently told me she's hosting an incoming group called Gays of Thrones, which is a fan base for Games of Thrones when they travel to destinations around the world for filming locations. I know this was a trend you wanted to highlight. Tell me a little bit more about this and what do you think destinations can do to really capitalize on LGBTQ shows and TV fandom?
Well, I think that the audiovisual world, the platforms, Netflix, HBO, you name it, they have become a powerful tool to promote destinations and to attach people to destinations and to get affection. And there was this survey or study report that Netflix and the World Travel Organization did last year, and they presented it in Madrid in Fitur. And believe it or not, 60% of the people that had watched content with images of Spain felt more attached to Spanish traditions than people who hadn't watched it. And people felt more eager to travel to Spain because of what they had seen in the shows. So for an NTO, for a National Tourist Office like mine, we need to be where our customers are. And 20 years ago, we were in magazines, newspapers. 40 years ago, we were in radio shows and cinemas and movie theaters. 10 years or 15 years ago, we all became digital, and we have a website and social profiles. And I think that we need to be now in these type of platforms. We have reached an agreement. We have signed an agreement with Netflix, and we are doing things with them. They value our collaboration because it helps them to also explore value, farther than just the guilty pleasure of watching Elite at your home. But I think it is important that we are learning as we talk to them, for example, with Netflix. Yesterday I talked to someone here that, and I was thinking that maybe we could do a web series about LGBTQ travelers going to different destinations in Spain, but not a travel show, but a web series that happens in Spain maybe, and shows the country and how LGBT reality is in Spain in a fictional way, but that relates to you. And I think this is where we need to be to capture the attention of these new generations, because it's not on TV. My younger nephews and nieces, they do not watch TV. They hardly ever read paper magazines or newspapers, and all they do is they are online and they watch this type of content. So we are developing this as we speak. It's something that we have started last year, and that we hope that we can develop in the near future.
If I could just jump in, Miguel, we had a pre-pandemic, we had worked with the Fab Five with Queer Eye to figure out to do a safety video for us. Yeah. And it was actually an amazing collaboration. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we shelved what was an awesome piece of content. Mm. We also worked with them to do an episode on one of our employees, which we showed on Delta Studio just a few months back. Some of you might have seen it as you travel. But we then also on social media aired the safety video they did for us, and of course had the disclaimer this was pre-pandemic, and it was one of the most fun and engaged pieces of content we put out there this year. So to your point, I think there's an incredible opportunity for all the brands in this room to partner and create content. And if that content has that nexus, and again back to the intersectionality of different groups of people working together and having personal stories around it, it becomes pretty compelling and it becomes pretty viral.
I'm all for that as a content creator. We've been saying it for years, so really, but I think, there's a real hunger for content. I know we're out of time. I have so much more to ask you, but just to round up, in 30 seconds each, one key tip going forward 2022. Let's start with Miguel at the end.
Well, travel. I'd encourage people to travel. Now, one last thought. Things are getting better, but if we keep, and this is from a governmental point of view, we need to make things easier for our customers. And we governments haven't, we've put it hard. And now people know that it's a hazard to travel, and they are willing to do it because, we just came from lockdowns and everything, but if we don't make it easier, people will spend their money on other things. So you need to press governments to make things easier. You need to press whatever your government is to make things easier. I will be pressured my trade, but we need to make things easier.
Rick?
Yeah. I think live your passion. Don't, if you have anything on your bucket list, do it now, not wait, and get out there and explore. I think what's been great about this whole this experience is you were able to reconnect with so much around you, as always maybe going outbound. So there's so much outbound, but there's also so much inbound. So I think it had, pluses in both of those areas, but yeah, live your passion and go after what you want as it relates to travel.
Jody?
You just took mine. It's okay, honey. Just to reiterate a point I made earlier is that it's the important thing for us is, as in this room, is to make sure that we have information that's easily available and rapidly available to our guests. Get vaccinated, encourage our people to get vaccinated. And also, I agree, live your dreams. We have to walk the talk. Regardless if we're LGBTQII, LMNOP, it doesn't matter if you're straight, yay, but we have to talk it and then walk it. It has no value if we're not standing behind our words.
And last but not least, Ranjan.
You know, I think getting out there into the world, we are probably the only industry that's preventing the world from getting more insular. And this last 18 months has been an incredible insular journey. That's something we haven't seen in the past. So what we do matters. And it's going to actually break down borders. We talk about flying over borders and connecting people, which is really, really important. I think the other thing that Rick said, that I've done over the last 18 months, is discover the United States. There is so much to see in our respective countries, and in this country, it's massive. And I was just in Juneau, Alaska, and I'd never even contemplated going there before. So I think that's the other piece of this. But as the world comes back, I love this notion, Miguel, of frictionless travel. How do we take the friction and the fear out of it? And we all can play a part in doing that.
I have one last tip. It's amazing what we've heard today, but my big tip is don't just follow trends, start them, right? So listen, thank you everyone. That was a truly amazing session. I've learned so much. Don't you agree, audience? Truly amazing? Give our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope to see you soon at Voyage tonight, where we can kiki over a drink. Thank you.